The persistent hum of the refrigerator was the loudest sound in my small Portland apartment, a constant counterpoint to the city's distant murmur. It was late, past midnight, and the only light came from the glow of my monitor, casting a cool blue pallor across my face. My name is Caleb Rourke, and I am 40 years old, a man who once navigated these very streets, ferrying strangers in my beat-up sedan, trying to make ends meet. Those days are long gone, thank goodness, but the observations from that time, the silent injustices I witnessed and felt, they never really left me. They festered quietly, patiently, until they demanded action. For years, I'd been the quiet observer, the one who saw patterns where others saw isolated incidents. My current job, a data entry gig for a local logistics company, was mind-numbingly dull, but it paid the bills and, more importantly, it left my mind free to wander, to connect the dots. I started a personal project, a digital archive of sorts, tracking complaints, forum posts, and even obscure local news articles about the rideshare industry. Not just about unfair algorithms or low pay, though those were certainly valid grievances. No, my focus was narrower, sharper. The blatant disrespect, the outright exploitation, the calculated demeaning behavior some drivers inflicted upon their passengers. I'd seen it firsthand, felt it secondhand, and now through this obsessive cataloging I was seeing it everywhere. Tonight, however, the humming seemed louder, more insistent, mirroring the thrum of anger in my chest. It wasn't a generalized, abstract anger this time. It had a name, a face, a smug, self-satisfied grin I knew all too well. Victor Maxwell. He was, to put it mildly, a blight on the rideshare landscape, a self-proclaimed influencer who regularly posted videos of his interactions with passengers, often edited to make them look foolish, demanding, or ungrateful. He was a master of subtle, cutting remarks, the kind that left you feeling diminished without giving you enough concrete evidence to complain. He often boasted about his high ratings, attributing them to his savvy and customer management skills. But I knew, and many others suspected, he was adept at manipulating the system, discarding low-rated passengers, or making conditions so uncomfortable they'd just give him 5 stars to escape. The incident that pushed me over the edge had happened just this morning. I hadn't seen it in person, but a frantic post on a local community forum, accompanied by a shaky video, had brought it to my attention. An elderly woman, frail and clearly disoriented, had accidentally left her grocery bags in Victor's car. She realized it minutes after he dropped her off and called him, pleading. Video, taken by a bystander, showed Victor pulling up not to return the bags but to stand triumphantly beside his car, filming her with his phone, mocking her forgetfulness, and demanding a return fee that was almost as much as the groceries themselves. He'd recorded her distress, her fumbling attempts to explain, her tearful capitulation, all while maintaining that infuriating detached smirk. He even posted it online, albeit quickly deleted after public outcry, but I had a copy. And the woman's name, the sight of her so utterly vulnerable, so blatantly exploited, had ignited something primal within me. It wasn't just about Victor anymore. It was about every passenger who'd been belittled, every elderly person taken advantage of, every weary traveler treated like an inconvenience. My quiet, meticulous data collection had suddenly become a prelude to something far more active, far more urgent. I wasn't just a chronicler of injustice anymore. I was going to be its architect. My hands, usually steady, trembled slightly as I pulled up my vast spreadsheet, rows and columns of data stretching back years. This wasn't just about one incident, one predatory driver. It was about a pattern, a systemic failure that allowed people like Victor to thrive. And as I started inputting the details of the elderly woman's encounter, a grim resolve settled over me. This time, Victor Maxwell had pushed the wrong person. He had drawn the attention of a man who understood patience, who understood the power of meticulous observation, and who was now willing to use every ounce of that understanding to dismantle him, piece by agonizing piece. For those who yearn for justice, for stories of the underdog finding their power, I urge you to subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily. My story was just beginning. My first step was to broaden my scope beyond just Victor. I started looking for connections, patterns. It wasn't enough to just expose him. I wanted to understand how he got away with it, why the company seemed to turn a blind eye, and what could be done to prevent others from falling victim. My apartment, once merely a place to sleep, became a command center. Maps of Portland were spread across my dining table, marked with the locations of reported incidents. My computer screen glowed with open tabs, obscure legal forums, rideshare company terms of service, consumer protection websites, and deep dives into Victor Maxwell's online presence. Victor, it turned out, was a connoisseur of self-promotion. He had a surprisingly large following, built on a persona of rugged individualism and telling it like it is. He posted daily, sometimes hourly, on various platforms, offering glimpses into his life, his strategies for maximizing earnings, and of course his subtly condescending takes on passenger behavior. He never outright insulted anyone in his public videos, but his body language, his tone, and the clever editing always conveyed a clear message. He was superior, and his passengers were often buffoons. It was insidious, and it was effective, insulating him from direct complaints. My initial attempts to flag his behavior with the rideshare company had gone precisely nowhere. Their automated systems were designed to deflect, not address. Customer service representatives, when I managed to reach them, recited pre-written apologies and assured me they took all feedback seriously, which was code for "we'll file this in the round file." They protected their drivers, especially the high-volume ones, from anything short of a criminal offense or a viral expose. This left a bitter taste in my mouth, solidifying my conviction that this wasn't just about Victor. It was about the complicity of the system itself. Days bled into weeks and weeks into months. My data collection became an art form. I cross-referenced Victor's published schedules with reported incidents, noting patterns in time and location. I scoured public records for any past brushes with the law, any civil complaints, anything that might hint at a history of predatory behavior. I discovered he'd been involved in a minor incident years ago, a property dispute with a neighbor over a shared fence where he'd tried to strong-arm them into paying for the entire thing. It was small, but it painted a picture of a man who saw no bounds to his own self-interest. I knew that a single incident, even a dozen, wouldn't be enough to bring down someone as entrenched and as manipulative as Victor. I needed a mosaic, a tapestry of his malfeasance, woven so tightly that it would be undeniable. I started reaching out cautiously to people who had posted about negative experiences with rideshare drivers in general, or with Victor specifically. I crafted careful anonymous messages offering to listen to document to help them understand their options. Most were wary at first, burned by past experiences with online charlatans or simply too exhausted to relive their unpleasant encounters. But a courageous few, responded. There was Maria, a single mother who had been charged an exorbitant cleaning fee for a spilled water bottle, despite taking photos that clearly showed no damage. There was Ben, a college student who had been left stranded miles from his destination after Victor unilaterally decided he didn't like the tone of Ben's voice and terminated the ride without a valid reason. Each story was a thread, and I meticulously added them to my growing dossier, cross-referencing times, dates, and what little information I had on Victor's car and license plate from my own rideshare days. My patience was a double-edged sword. It allowed me to build an ironclad case, but it also meant enduring the slow burn of frustration and the gnawing feeling that Victor was still out there, continuing his deplorable behavior. There were moments of despair, late nights when I stared at the data, feeling small against the enormity of the injustice. What was one man armed with a spreadsheet and a moral compass against an entire industry and a cunning, unrepentant individual? This was where the insidious doubt crept in, whispering that I was wasting my time, that Victor would always find a way to slide through the cracks. It was a tempting thought to just walk away, to go back to my quiet life and my mind-numbing job. But then I'd remember the elderly woman's tear-streaked face, or Maria's desperate plea for help, and the fire would reignite. For anyone who feels unheard, who seeks retribution against those who exploit, remember to subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily. It's a powerful source of inspiration, a reminder that every struggle, every act of defiance matters. My transformation was complete. I was no longer just observing, I was strategizing. I began to think about the delivery, the impact. A single Reddit post, even a detailed one, would be lost in the noise. I needed something more substantial, something that would hit the rideshare company where it hurt, their reputation and their bottom line. I started exploring legal avenues, consumer protection agencies, and most promisingly, local investigative journalism. Portland had a few independent news outlets known for their deep dives into corporate malfeasance. They were my best bet. The struggle was real. It wasn't just the sheer volume of data I had to process, but the emotional toll it took. Each new account of Victor's contemptuous behavior chipped away at my own sense of peace. I found myself becoming more withdrawn, my conversations with colleagues shorter, my interest in casual socializing waning. My nights were consumed by research, my days by the mental replay of scenarios, the meticulous planning of my next move. I was no longer just Caliburk, data entry clerk. I was Caliburk, the chronicler of injustice and soon its deliverer. The weight of that responsibility was heavy, but so was the promise of true vindication. My plan solidified. I needed an unimpeachable source, someone credible who could corroborate my findings and lend them weight. That's when I remembered Officer Davies. She wasn't a detective, just a patrol officer I'd met years ago when I reported a minor fender bender. She'd been surprisingly thorough, sympathetic even, and had given me her card for future reference. I hadn't thought about her in years, but now a flicker of an idea sparked. What if Victor Maxwell had a record not just of civil complaints, but something more official, something a police officer might have access to, or at least be able to point me towards? It was a long shot, but I was running out of options that didn't involve me becoming a full-fledged private investigator, which was far beyond my skill set and resources. I found the worn business card tucked away in an old wallet. Her number was still on it. I hesitated, pacing my small living room, the city lights twinkling outside my window. This was a significant step, crossing a line from private research to active engagement with law enforcement. It could backfire spectacularly. They might dismiss me as a crank, or worse, Victor might find out I was digging and retaliate. But the thought of Maria and the elderly woman and all the others steeled my resolve. I picked up the phone. Officer Davies, now a sergeant, surprisingly remembered me. Caliburk, right, that old white sedan bumper falling off. You were always so polite, even after that drunk driver hit you. Her voice was gruff, but there was a hint of warmth. I quickly, succinctly explained my project. I didn't mention revenge, only justice and the desire to hold predatory rideshare drivers accountable. I laid out the meticulous data I had gathered on Victor Maxwell, the pattern of exploitation, the manipulation of the rating system, the emotional distress he caused. I emphasized the deleted video of the elderly woman, mentioning I had a copy. She listened patiently without interruption. When I finished, there was a long pause. Mr. Rourke, she said finally, her voice flat, you've been busy. Very busy. This isn't exactly in my purview, but I do know Maxwell. He's been on our radar for a while for various minor disturbances, mostly nuisance complaints, but nothing that's ever stuck. He's good at towing the line just enough to avoid serious charges. My heart sank. However, she continued, the way you've laid this out, the pattern of behavior, the specific instances, it's compelling. And that video, if it's as clear as you say, could be a problem for him. Especially if it shows him actively extorting someone. She paused again. Tell you what, Mr. Rourke, I can't launch an official investigation based solely on your data, but I can connect you with someone who might be able to help, a journalist, Sarah Chen from the Portland Chronicle. She's known for her investigative work on consumer protection issues. She doesn't pull punches, and she's not afraid to take on big companies. This was exactly what I had hoped for, even better. A police officer vouching for my credibility, opening a door to the media. The meeting with Sarah Chen was nerve-wracking. She was sharp, cynical, with eyes that seemed to bore into you, searching for the truth beneath the words. I brought my laptop, my external hard drive, my meticulously organized binders filled with printed complaints and timelines. I showed her the spreadsheet, the cross-referenced data points, the patterns. I played her the video of Victor tormenting the elderly woman. Sarah watched the video in silence, her expression unreadable. When it finished, she leaned back, eyes still on the screen. He deleted this, you said. Within hours, I confirmed, but I downloaded it before he could. I have others too, though less damning, showing his general condescension. She nodded slowly. And you say this is just the tip of the iceberg, that he does this to multiple passengers. Not just Victor, though he's the most egregious, I explained. It's a systemic issue. But he's a perfect example of what happens when these companies prioritize volume over vetting, and when their complaint systems are designed to protect drivers, not passengers. I pointed to a chart on my screen illustrating the common themes in Victor's infractions. Sarah Chen spent 3 hours with me that day, asking incisive questions, pushing me to clarify every detail. She didn't just listen, she analyzed. She saw the story, not just a collection of grievances. By the time she left, she had copies of everything and a solemn promise that she would look into it. No guarantees, Mr. Rourke, she'd said, but this is potent, very potent. If I can corroborate even a fraction of what you've shown me, Maxwell's going to have a bad week. And the rideshare company, well, they might have an even worse one. The next few weeks were a blur of nervous anticipation. Sarah called me frequently, asking for more details, verifying information, following up on leads. She found other victims who had been too intimidated or too weary to come forward, and my meticulous documentation helped her connect them to Victor. She reached out to the rideshare company directly, posing as a concerned citizen, trying to navigate their labyrinthine complaint system, only to be met with the same automated responses I had received. This, she said, was almost as damning as Victor's behavior itself. It proved their negligence. The tension was almost unbearable. I couldn't eat properly, I barely slept. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. I pictured Victor still driving, still posting his smug videos, oblivious that a storm was gathering, meticulously orchestrated by a man he didn't even know existed. I fantasized about the moment he would learn, the look on his face when his carefully constructed world began to crumble. This wasn't about violence, it was about public humiliation, about stripping away his platform, his livelihood, his carefully cultivated image. It was about exposing him for the petty tyrant he was. One Tuesday morning, the Portland Chronicle landed on my doorstep with a heavy thud. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Sarah Chen's byline was emblazoned across the top of the front page. The headline screamed, "The Wheels of Injustice, How One Rideshare Driver Preys on Portland Passengers and How the Company Looks Away." Below it was a large, unflattering photo of Victor Maxwell, pulled from one of his public social media profiles. I devoured the article, my heart pounding in my chest. It was everything I had hoped for and more. Sarah had woven my data, my victims' testimonies, and her own meticulous investigative work into a devastating indictment. She quoted Maria Ben, and most powerfully the elderly woman whose name she had protected but whose story was vividly told. The video clip of Victor mocking her was a QR code in the article, leading directly to the Chronicle's website where it was hosted. She dissected Victor's online persona, exposing the thinly veiled contempt beneath his charming facade. She detailed the rideshare company's inadequate complaint system, their lack of accountability, and their effective shielding of drivers like Victor. The article didn't just expose Victor, it implicated the system that enabled him. It quoted consumer protection advocates who called for stricter regulations and more transparent accountability mechanisms. It was a call to action, a rallying cry for all those who had felt powerless in the face of corporate indifference. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. My phone, which had been silent for so long, started ringing off the hook. Sarah Chen called first, her voice tired but triumphant. "It's out, Caleb, and it's hitting hard. The company's already issued a boilerplate statement, but I've got sources telling me they're scrambling internally." Social media erupted. People were sharing the article, commenting, expressing outrage. Victor Maxwell's social media pages, once filled with self-aggrandizing posts, were now flooded with furious comments, accusations, and calls for his deactivation. His carefully cultivated image shattered in real time. Within hours, the rideshare company, clearly feeling the immense public pressure, announced that Victor Maxwell's account had been permanently deactivated pending review of serious allegations. The word permanently echoed in my mind, sweet as honey, but the story didn't end there. The article had revealed something else, a twist I hadn't anticipated. During her investigation, Sarah Chen had uncovered that Victor Maxwell had a history of financial fraud. Years before, he had run a small, fly-by-night car detailing business, taking deposits for services he never delivered, leaving customers with unfinished work and empty promises. He'd narrowly avoided criminal charges due to technicality, but several civil judgments had been filed against him, which he had skillfully dodged for years. My research had touched on a property dispute, but Sarah had dug deeper, finding the pattern of deceit that predated his rideshare career. This revealed a deeper layer of his character, one that went beyond mere disrespect to outright criminality. This new information poured fuel on the fire. Local news channels picked up the story, interviewing Sarah Chen, quoting the Chronicle's article. The fraud allegations added a new dimension to Victor's public image, turning him from a mere jerk into a full-blown con artist. The public outrage intensified. I watched it all unfold from the quiet sanctuary of my apartment, a silent observer once more, but this time of my own making. There was no grand confrontation, no dramatic monologue. My revenge was clinical, meticulous, and devastatingly effective. It was the chronicling of injustice, meticulously laid bare for the world to see. I didn't need to gloat. The public, his former passengers, and the media were doing it for me. The rideshare company, reeling from the public relations nightmare, was forced to make concrete changes. They announced a complete overhaul of their driver vetting process, a more robust and transparent complaint system, and a dedicated team to investigate serious allegations. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a direct result of Victor Maxwell's downfall. His destruction had paved the way for improvements that would protect countless future passengers. A week later, Sarah Chen called me. "Caleb," she said, her voice lighter than I'd ever heard it. "Maxwell's gone. Moved out of his apartment, according to his landlord. Public shame was too much for him, I guess. His online presence is completely wiped. No more influencer videos, just silence." A quiet satisfaction bloomed in my chest, a deep, resonant peace I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the kind of violent, explosive satisfaction one sees in movies. It was the calm vindication of justice served, of a wrong finally righted. My patience, my observations, my moral steadfastness, they had all converged to dismantle a bully, not with a fist but with truth. The work I had done, the meticulous compilation of his transgressions, had found its purpose, fulfilling the exact motivation that had driven me. I looked around my apartment, no longer a command center, but just a home again. The maps were put away, the binders filed. The humming of the refrigerator was just that, a hum. My life would return to its quiet rhythms, but I knew I was changed. I had seen the power of persistence, the impact of a single, determined individual. I had proven that even the quietest among us can wield immense power when fueled by a righteous cause. And as for Victor Maxwell, wherever he was, I knew he carried the weight of his own undoing. His arrogance had been his downfall, meticulously documented and delivered by a man he never saw coming. It was a bitter pill, one he would choke on for a very long time. If you too have felt the sting of injustice, if you crave stories where the downtrodden rise and the powerful are held accountable, then remember to subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily. There are countless tales waiting to be told, and mine, Caleb Burks, is just one of them. A quiet testament to the enduring power of truth, observation, and relentless, patient revenge.